Like, there's no G, there's no G. Yeah. I'm telling you, I printed it. I'm like, this is it. This was the perfect thing. Why didn't I? And then anything they captured then.
Anything looked over? Yeah. Shoot me an email. Have a look at it, okay?
Appreciate it, but you know, this is easy enough. You can look at it.
It's just, you know, because the last thing you want is to do something, help someone out, and then So I figure I can get it to her really whenever I need it. The answer is I
As
have
soon as the
no,
mayor asks me if I'm anyone,
I don't have a report.
Wait till everybody gets seated.
I mean, we may have,
I'm ready. Okay.
yeah, so, but I won't know.
you're ready.
Jim told me I was supposed to have it today, or I was supposed to get it back today. Still no, so.
Good evening. I'd like to call the regular Borough Council meeting of March 28, 2022 to order. This meeting has been properly advertised in the Home News Tribune of January 7, 2022, according to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana.
Here.
Councilwoman Newbauer.
Here.
Councilman O'Donnell. Here. Councilman Peretti.
Here.
Councilman Potter.
Here.
And Councilman Revelinsky.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silence, followed by a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So before we go on to the approval of minutes, I'm going to call an audible here and talk about something that's been brought to my attention, and I'm sure a lot of the council members as well, and that is this letter that went out about our water. It's something that, you know, we were aware of. I've invited, it's our CME, our engineers are aware, and I've also invited our water operator here this evening because I know folks have a lot of questions. Now, that being said, there is going to be an open utilities committee meeting to address every single question, because it's not really something that we can get into in full detail here at the council meeting, but the water operator, the engineer, and the Utilities Committee, headed by Councilman Peretti, will take your questions. And James, that is when?
1 week from today, Monday, April 4th, at the Senior Citizen Center.
At the where? Oh, at the Senior
Senior
Citizen.
Citizen.
Okay, okay. And that'll be posted on the website. That said, before I ran for mayor, the year that I was a council person, I was the chair of the Utilities Committee, and we had an open meeting, and we discussed all about the adding the corrosion inhibitor. We had a pass a couple of times, so we didn't have to add the corrosion inhibitor. However, once we had a failure, it's mandated by the DEP. We had a plan in place to put in a pump to add this. Unfortunately, that due to COVID and several other factors, that wasn't installed, and that was the main reason for you getting this letter. Now, I always say that when we run for office, we need to be accountable, so I feel that I'm accountable because I'm the mayor and I'm at the top of the food chain here, and I want to apologize for the way that you got this letter. I know it upset a lot of people. Had we known exactly how it would go out, we could have been more proactive and had this meeting beforehand to answer your questions, but we will certainly do this now. There are limited houses. Not everyone in Milltown has a lead service line. There are various things that the federal government and the state are mandating that we do, but we never want to cause, upsetment, discomfort in the public, and I'm afraid that this letter did this. And, we can do better going in the future. One of the things that we're going to take into account is having more administrative oversight over the projects and what goes out. Nothing should go out unless it's been vetted and we're all aware that you're going to get that information. So with that, if there are any particular questions or comments that you want to make, I'll be glad to take them. If not, you can save your questions for next Monday.
I'm just wondering that, is that considered an open public meeting, and can all council members attend, or are we going to be limited to only 3?
It's the subcommittee of the utilities.
So I, as a resident,
You may-
even though I cannot attend?
Correct. Otherwise, it would be a quorum and we'd have to advertise.
Okay. And is it gonna be videotaped then? Will we be able to have that put on Channel 15 for those residents who can't attend?
Russ, can you videotape?
What's the date again?
Next Monday.
I guess I can. One for anything else?
Okay, great. I think, well, and if people can't come and they want to submit questions, you can email Councilman Peretti at jperetti@milltownborough.com. We'll put, all of our addresses, contact information is on the website, so feel free to contact any of us. I have my contact info on there as well. If you have specific questions, if you can't make it next Monday, or you have any concerns, the Utilities Committee will be glad to answer, or I will as well.
What time on Monday?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.?
Yes. But if you have anything in particular now that you want to bring to our attention, feel free to come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mayor. My name's Kathleen Canning. I live at 175 East Lawrence Street. Hello, everybody. There were 2 letters. One was the one that we had lead in the water, and I'm assuming they're going to try to rectify that. But I received a letter about a month ago that was about 3 pages that discussed having to take the lead line, take the lines from your home into the main.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we can talk about now, or you want to do next week?
It's up to you. Mike, James, do you want to?
So, I mean, we'll definitely talk more about that next week, but because that'll be a topic, but we can talk about that in a minute. So, the second letter that the mayor was just talking about, for the corrosion inhibitor, that was a separate issue that we had a few years ago that we had to do per state guidelines.
Okay.
That longer letter,
Yeah.
that's going to be mandated, and I'll pass it to our engineers in a second. That's for all municipalities have to identify their lead service lines and
Okay.
and try to have a plan to replace them in the next 10 years.
Oh, so this, I'm thinking I have to do this next week.
No.
Okay.
And our engineer can discuss
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
This is a
I'm sorry
state
to take your
mandate.
time.
Mike, do you
No,
want
that's,
to?
it's a very good question.
Thank
Just let me maybe make one thing clear. Your water has never been tested to have lead in it. The only potential you have for lead in your water is you have a lead service line. Milltown's water has been tested many times and never found lead in it. So I think everybody should just relax.
Yeah.
It's really not the
No,
case.
I'm most concerned about having to replace a line like this, the longer letter that's like a month
Yeah.
from, and that's, I'm like, do I have to get this done like before summer or by
State-
Memorial Day or
It's
something?
As Councilman Peretti said, the state has put a requirement on 10 years, but there's also reports of financing for that. So that
Right.
hopefully the residents don't have to
Thank
pay.
you.
And that's what we're trying to go through. and do.
I
Mayor and
understand.
Council.
I appreciate the clarity from all of you.
No, that's a longer.
Thank you.
And to your point about that, when you got this letter and the feedback I think a lot of us got, and Mike, thanks for clearing that up, is it scared a lot of people. It's not everybody doesn't have a lead service line, everybody doesn't have that, but if you read it, you mentioned all the health effects and things, and it's a small percentage, and the amount that it would go over to fail. This test has been, the number has kept being lowered by the state, so while we perhaps passed in the past, this time we didn't, so, I apologize that it wasn't really made clear that, it's something that was very close and it's not affecting everyone, but the letter certainly was a surprise and a shock to a lot of people. So we will have closer oversight going forward and happy to answer any and all questions about the health effects, the exceedance levels, the lead service plan, what's going on with the federal infrastructure money versus what the state's doing versus what the borough has to do. So please join the subcommittee next week.
Monday at 7.
Right. Anything else, James?
No, you said it all, but same thing, utility committee, to what the mayor said, we own that and we should have had a better communication plan for that. So again, that corrosion inhibitor is a requirement. It should have been installed already. There's been some issues with the vendor timing, but that's something that we've said a long time ago, a couple of years ago, this council has said that that was a plan to do, a requirement to do, and it's being installed. It should be in within the next few weeks, but unfortunately we missed the required deadline. That's unfortunately, there's some oversight that hindsight's 2020, that we should have timed that better with our vendor, particularly with some supply issues, but like we said, we could have communicated that better, and hopefully on Monday, we can answer more questions, particularly about the plan for lead inventory planning, as well as some of the, with the results of this installation of the corrosion inhibitor.
It's coming, and unfortunately, the supply was a little bit of a victim of COVID, and, you know, as we discussed when we talked about doing the corrosion inhibitor a couple years ago, while we're not thrilled to have to put another chemical in our water, there are, as usual, pros and cons, and one of the pros would be that the folks that might be having some discolored water issues may get some benefit from taking the corrosive elements out of the service lines. So, I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate all the people that called and spoke to us, and we certainly want to be accountable, and we will make sure to you know, get our communication a little more careful next time. So with that,
Well, I've got actually, are we going to revisit this in a little bit, or you want to just, you want to do the quick intro? I have a couple of questions as we're speaking, and I know several years ago, I want to say it was probably about 5, the state changed the mandate, and everyone remembers, I think it was Flint, Michigan, that had the issues, and then everybody in the nation wound up reducing it from parts per million to parts per billion. And I heard that perhaps additionally, they reduced those allowable limits. Mike, is that true?
Correct.
They've changed them again since then?
Correct.
So even though we were pretty close to being in compliant, I know we had one sample that was taken at an abandoned home, which put us into the first exceedance platform and then put us on this kind of high alert level.
Correct.
And then we wound up getting another one, in which time the state said that we have to adjust ourselves. So since that time when the state mandated.
Let me just, you resisted installation of corrosion control for many years. And unfortunately, they finally said you absolutely have to do it. They won't move back on their position.
Right, yeah, I remember that letter being presented where actually Mayor went down to the state and met with them, and they said, look, we understand your situation, but one exceedance more, and that's it, you're putting it in.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if, since the date of that letter, have they reduced the allowable limits? And I want to say that was probably, and Madam Mayor, maybe you remember better, but was that 2019?
it was 2019 when we had a few in a row we passed, and that allowed us not to put the corrosion inhibitor in, and then it was sometime either later 2019 or early 2020, I don't recall, that we had one more failure, and then as soon as we had the one more failure, it was, you have to put this in, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Right, and I'm just curious if between the time of that letter and the time of the next exceedance, if they had lowered the allowable limits even further, is that, you know, maybe we were flying fine, you know, and would have been okay, but then they dropped it again.
I'd have to check, Rich, because a lot has to do with the solubility of the lead in the water. When the water is warmer, which would be in the summer months, the solubility is higher. In the cooler months, which one of the tests were taken, you passed because the solubility was lower. So, and remember, you have surface water, you don't have groundwater, so it's much different than what that some of the other towns have. So you have to understand that too. And one of the things they've added now to that recent change, Rich, is they now want galvanized service, because the belief is that folks that have galvanized also have a lead gooseneck. So all these things are being brought out, right or wrong, but that's what they're doing. There is no way to back them off at this point.
And then, just real quick, and I promise I'll stop after
No,
this.
go ahead.
Hopefully I will. I don't know, I
That's
have a tendency to ramble on.
Open
So, if I recall correctly, even when we had the exceedances, they were all of the homes within our sampling group that had lead services, that we never actually had an exceedance from the homes that were in that later construction profile. I think it was like 84 to 92 or something, in which you might have had some lead used in the construction of your home. But is that still the case, that all of our exceedances came from homes that actually had lead services?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that just helps everyone
Yeah.
who's listening at home,
It's
that really this is a lead service issue, that, you know,
Right.
we're not really seeing the same sort of results that you would get for a home that was built at the last years that they ever used lead.
It's a very small sample, but unfortunately, we all have to comply with it. And it went, the letter went out to all water customers, even though the sample could have been 3 homes or out of the 40-some that we sample from. So that's unfortunately what's mandated by the DEP.
And then I guess, okay, I got one.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'll stop, I promise.
I'm
I'll
no
stop.
expert on it, but.
Way back when we first looked at this, we evaluated the opportunity for the borough to remove those lines, and you couldn't spend public funds on privately owned property. We then went in to look at some grant or low-interest loan opportunities, but they deemed that the residents of Milltown, on average, our income was greater than that of Middlesex County average, so therefore we would not apply. Has any of that legislation changed to allow us opportunities for more monies from the state and the ability to go in and work on what would essentially be private property?
This is a state mandate, and financing to offset the cost has not been decided yet. So we're keeping our ear to the ground for obvious reasons. This is a big cost, especially for a resident with a concrete road in front of their house. And you may wind up with finding more, and adding galvanized services to the list really doesn't fit to the lead model, but now they want the galvanized, and you have more galvanized than probably copper in town. So we're about to put together that notice. Hopefully the folks are filling them out and trying to get some more information so we can find out really what the impact's going to be. And then the state obviously is talking about hopefully grants. Low interest loans for Milltown is a problem because you have to pay those back. So we're trying to see what grants are available. The infrastructure bill is coming out. The money is starting to filter back to the towns. And what's nice about it is it's not all at one time. It's going to come and graduate it. So hopefully that money is going to be used for these. But we don't have a definite yet. And the borough has asked us to try and find out whatever financing we can, and that's what we're up to doing. So hopefully there's a way to defer the
The
cost.
federal infrastructure bill includes specific language about lead lines, correct?
That's correct.
So.
But a lot of that money goes to the loan program. That's the concern. So the iBank, which you're familiar with, is going to be the recipient of a lot of those federal funds, and that's a loan program. Now, they have grant programs inside that loan program, and I think that's where you want to try and go through and press. So you can understand, I mean, the whole state has a certain amount. Take the 500 and some odd communities and take, say, 20 or 30 is an awful lot of services at $5,000 or $10,000 a pop. So it's something to really consider.
It's definitely something that you can explain more next week,
Good.
but it's something that, we don't want to spend money on if there's going to be money coming from the state or the federal government, so we'll sort of wait and see. Yes, sir. Can you come to the podium and give your name and address, please?
Sure. Robert Sexton, 18 Ox Ave. I just was wondering how you guys went about collecting the samples?
The
Or
samples,
is this a question that I should just ask
No,
next
but-
week?
Well, you can ask it next week, but we do have the water operator here, so rather than have him come out for no reason, we'll let him answer a question this evening,
Hi,
too.
I'm actually a licensed operator for the town of Milltown, also the licensed operator.
Oh, could you go by Jeanette's microphone? Oh.
Hi there, check, 1, 2, 3.
And I would, but before you go, Max, I mean, this is something that's probably, and we've been talking about this for 5, 6, 10 years, so I apologize, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to do the meeting next week, is because there's a lot of new residents in town and people that aren't aware of how these samples work and stuff, so we can certainly get into it next week, but if you could just give a quick little synopsis, Max, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. Just how, again, my name's Max Huber, and I'm the licensed operator. I'm also the licensed operator for the Borough of Hawthorne. And how the DEP goes about it is Milltown has to submit sites that the DEP will approve to get tested. And they look for a sample pool of probably the worst-case scenario, the oldest houses. You had heard earlier that the sample pool is not, they're looking for a lot of material prior to 1984, preferably even further older than that. Because in 1984, you had to stop using lead-bearing solder. So that's how they pick the sample pool. You look through the distribution system and work
No,
with
but
the
I mean, like,
engineers.
did somebody go to the door, knock on the door, and ask for a sample of water? Or did
Well, no, the residents, they're part of the survey, so we give them a bottle, they have instructions. They run the water, they let the water sit for 6 to 8 hours, they collect a sample, it's called a first draw sample. So
Maybe this question is for next week, when there's more people in attendance, but Councilman Revelinsky said that you guys collected a sample from an abandoned house. Who's living at the house to give the sample?
That happened a long time ago, sir. And what happened was the borough got permission from the real estate agent to get into the house that day. That's not normally how it's done. The state requires that they take certain samples. They had that on the list, so what the borough did was they got into the house to the real estate agent. Right or wrong, that's what they did.
Yeah, we'll get into, and, you know, as Mike has said many times, if you are in a house that has that, as soon as you run your water in the morning or flush your toilet, that clears out a lot, but these are the first draw samples,
It's called the
right?
first draw sample, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that's why you run your faucet, I get it. That being said, you know, I've been here for a couple of years, and I was at that other town meeting, and you guys also dropped that knowledge about the abandoned house. I've lived in Milltown for years now. I mean, where is there an abandoned house in Milltown?
I don't know where it was 3 or 4 years ago.
I mean, at this point, it's probably been, let's be realistic, at this
Oh,
point, it's probably been bought and
I mean,
redone,
the
It was on
the
South
sample
Main, I
places
believe, at
have
the time.
changed, for sure, and that's, you know, that's sort of goes way back, and was it the most efficient way to do it? No. You know, but that's part of the reason that the borough, in the last couple of years, has hired a licensed water operator, and we have our partners with CME to make sure that these things are done correctly now.
Okay, I get it. I'm just trying to think if I have any more questions. No, that's about it.
Okay, well, anything else come next week?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Good. Thank you, Max.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Anybody else? We'll go back to the regular agenda. Thanks for indulging the audible. Okay, so now we're moving on to the approval of minutes from March 14th, 2022. May I have a motion and a second?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that the minutes be approved as typed.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Potter, second by Councilman Peretti. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to comments from the audience on resolutions. Next, if any member of the public wishes to speak on any of the resolutions, please identify yourself to the clerk and say your name and address for the record. These comments are limited to resolutions listed on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll close audience comments and go on to bills and claims. Will the clerk please read by title only the bill resolution 083-2022?
Resolution 083-2022 is authorizing the payment of bills, claims, and statements against the Borough of Milltown in the total amount of $1,924,099.31.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
I move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilwoman Newbauer. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to introduction of resolutions. When voting on resolutions, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and, having been reviewed by the Borough Council, will be enacted by one motion. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and if so removed, will be treated as a separate matter. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds. Are there any questions, or does any council person want to pull any resolution from the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Resolution 90 and 95.
90 and 95. Any others? Okay. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda, please?
Whereas pursuant to the rules of council, the council may establish a consent agenda for any regular or special meeting. And whereas the Borough Clerk has posted a consent agenda for this meeting. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, that the consent agenda previously prepared by the clerk be approved without the necessity of having the individual resolutions read by the Borough Clerk.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
I move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Potter. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
And this is a motion to approve the resolutions excluding 090-2022 and 095-2022. Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dubauer?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Abstain from 086-2022 and aye for the rest.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the number?
086-2022.
Thank you. And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read the resolution 090-2022 by title?
090-2022 is authorizing CME Engineering to proceed with certain projects, 2022 Clayton Court Road improvements.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Peretti. Any discussion?
Yes, actually, we could probably wrap up both 92 and 95 quickly. My comments were just in regards to the ongoing work with PSE&G, and if CME Associates or anyone from the borough has reached out to PS and found out if they intend to do any work on Clayton Court or in the areas pertaining to Resolution 95 for the water main lining. Because of my concern here, again, is that we're going to be digging up the road, or they're going to be digging up the road, and we're going to go out back and pave it, and then we're going to have potholes again, so.
Councilor Revelinsky, after your last meeting, we did speak to the Public Works Director, and on Hagen-Bettain, for example, we've asked them not to do the milling and paving, you can save that, and he indicated he would look at other locations. I will speak to him again tomorrow and make sure that no sense going through and spending money. But Clayton Court, as you know, has been deteriorated for some time, so, obviously they're going to do their trench repair, but as far as spending the money on milling and paving, probably would work out that we don't need it and do it when we, and spread the money somewhere else.
No, absolutely, and that's the desire here, is that if we're going to pave, we pave. But, I don't want to see PS pave, and then we go back and rip it up. I don't want to throw good money after.
I think Ralph had it under control already, but I'll check with him again, okay?
Thank you.
Somebody was going to meet with Frank Lucchese for, who was that, Jeanette? What, you? Okay. Yeah, so we can coordinate with PSE&G and with the borough to make sure that everyone's on the same page on that. Okay? All right, so going back to that one, any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll for 090-2022?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Will the clerk please read 095-2022 by title?
For the record, 095-2022 is a resolution accepting the grant agreement between the NJ Department of Community Affairs and the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, for water lining replacement.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
I move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Potter. Any further discussion?
So, just looking at this again, I see water lining replacement, and Mike, we're doing cleaning and lining on these, correct?
Well,
That's the intent?
For example, Chestnut Street behind Highland there, the borough indicates a high evidence or incidence of break history. So in certain areas, this grant has been set up to either line with cement, structural line, or replace. We bid structural lining last time with the project, and it's very high cost. It equaled or was actually a little higher, I think, than replacement. So there's certain areas where we're leaving the committee to decide what you want to do with regard to cost, but there's going to be one of those three options selected.
Okay.
Okay?
And again, I assume that the areas in question will be coordinated with PS.
That's correct. And with your Public Works Director.
Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now we have a public hearing for an ordinance. This is the public hearing for ordinance 2022-1508. And since introduction, full copies of ordinance 22-1508 are presently posted on the borough website. on the bulletin board at Borough Hall and are available at no cost in the office of the municipal clerk between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. 22-1508, bond ordinance providing for roadway improvements to Clayton Court by and in the Borough of Milltown in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, appropriating $650,000, therefore inclusive of a State of New Jersey Department of Transportation grant in the amount of $520,233, and authorizing the issuance of a $129,767 bond note or notes of the borough to finance part of the cost thereof. May I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing for ordinance 22-1508?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilwoman O'Donnell, second by Councilman Potter. All in favor? The public hearing on ordinance 22-1508 is now open to any member of the public who wishes to speak on ordinance 22-1508. If anyone wishes to speak, they can come up to the podium. Seeing none, I will close audience comments. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The public hearing for ordinance 22-1508 is now closed. So now I'll take a motion to adopt ordinance 22-1508.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Potter, second by Council President Zambrana. Any further questions or comments from the council? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana.
Aye.
Councilman Newbauer.
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell.
Aye.
Councilman Peretti.
Aye.
Councilman Potter.
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will move on to council reports. We'll start this evening with the Department of Public Safety. Councilman Dave Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one report and a follow-up this evening. The first report is from Chief Brian Kennelly from the Milltown Police Department. Police are receiving calls regarding coyote sightings. We've posted newsflash information on the official borough website at www.milltownnj.org to help answer any questions. Please report aggressive behavior or confined wild animals to the Milltown Police. General sightings or other concerns need to be directed to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Office of Wildlife Management at 908-735-4513. This number is also available on the Milltown website. The U.S. Department of Agriculture will compile data and determine a response on a case-by-case basis. From the Office of Emergency Management, as a part of FEMA Community Awareness Grant project, residents will notice the digital sign on Main Street and Washington Avenue. This sign will display COVID-19 information through July 1st. COVID-19 information is available at covid19.nj.gov. Thank you, Chief Brian Kennelly. Madam Mayor, I just want to also bring up a follow-up regarding the last meeting in regards to a question that was raised at the last council meeting during audience comments about demographic information being included in the monthly police reports. The mayor and I had a meeting with Chief Kennelly and Lieutenant Johnson, and it was indicated that this information is not captured in the system and thus not available for the monthly report. Also, regarding the residents' follow-up concern to the question, there was an investigation regarding this concern, and as a result of the investigation, the concern was concluded to be unfounded and false. I've also spoken with this resident and presented him with the information, and he indicated that he's satisfied with the results. It's also important to know that our police department, majority of them are here today, have not received any complaints regarding racially influenced policing. They've also had 0 internal affairs complaints against them in 2021 and 0 so far for 2022. They're also an accredited agency and takes any and all concerns like this very seriously. And finally, I would like to thank all of our emergency service departments on their heroic efforts in the very early morning hours of March 19th, where we had a vehicle crash into a home on the north side of town. No one was seriously injured, and by 2 p.m., Main Street was back open again. I know, Madam Mayor, you took first shift and I took second shift. Right. I thank everybody that was out there, especially our police department, fire, rescue. It was a great job, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the Department of Utilities. Councilman James Peretti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the electric report, substation checks were performed daily. Line clearance was performed on Durst and Pinewood and Cherry Hill. Line clearance will continue to be ongoing as it has been proven to be effective in reducing outages. Streetlight repairs were performed at 75 Janet Court. The electric department members assisted in the water department by troubleshooting the Muffin Monster controller at Church Street Pump and getting it back in service. As Councilman Potter mentioned, there was a motor vehicle accident that took out a PSE&G pole on North Main Street. Despite the severity of that accident, only 4 apartments saw an outage, and after PSE&G set a new pole, the Milltown Electric Utilities made necessary repairs for the 2 affected structures, and 1 service drop was repaired and 1 had to be replaced. A broken Verizon-owned pole was discovered on Pinewood Drive. Verizon replaced the pole, and the Milltown Electric Utilities did the wire transfer to the new pole. An outage on Durst Drive was caused by a broken secondary wire mid-span between 2 poles. Approximately 6 homes were briefly without power while the repair was being made. A home on Nicholas Court was experiencing flickering lights. After troubleshooting, it was revealed there was a bad service connection. Wires were reattached. Several businesses were without power on North Main Street, and a broken primary conductor was discovered at the fuse cutout feeding a transformer. Department members replaced the cutout, lighting arrestor, and associated wiring to restore power. The utility department worked with the building department to rectify billing issues and replace malfunctioning meters. 6 meters have been replaced. We'd like to remind the public that electrical meters are to be accessible to meter readers. We are encountering many properties with locked gates prohibiting access. This makes meter reading more time-consuming and ties up the crew. However, there are other options if residents cannot have more accessibility. Residents can fill out monthly reading cards and submit them to the billing department, or residents can take pictures of their electric meters and send them to the following email address: ahamm@milltownborough.com. That's aham@milltownborough.com. The cards are available at the billing office or can be delivered to your mailbox if you request them. Residents are also reminded that they are required to post a warning on gates where a dog may be in the backyard. Moving on to the water and sewer report, along with all daily work orders, markouts, emergency markouts, the water sewer department has the following to report. The water improvement project on Chestnut and Highland began on March 16th and will continue until completed. A high volume of markouts have been required all around town due to PSE&G work. Training continues within the department to complete these markouts. A second letter about lead education was mailed out as per DEP regulations. And if any residents have any questions, please contact Don Herman at extension 148, or like we mentioned earlier, we'll have a meeting April 4th, Monday at 7 p.m. at the Senior Citizen Center. And finally, please check Channel 15 and milltownnj.org for water sewer updates. The Utilities Subcommittee met last week to continue our conversations from our meeting in early March. We reviewed our multi-year town plan for the smart metering program, and we're continuing our efforts in updating meters for all residents and utilizing the improved software to monitor usage and billing. The committee also reviewed the Highland Drive and Chestnut Street plans and discussed the Phase 2 completion of the remainder of Highland Drive. We continued our long-term planning for pipe cleaning and lining projects, and I requested initial design concepts from our engineers for a few additional impacted areas. And that, just again mentioning from earlier before, the utility department members are actively inspecting service lines while in homes, as we mentioned about the smart meter replacement. The utility department are installing new meters and inspecting the service lines that are visible to see if any homes need to be added to the lead service inventory list. Additionally, a survey will be soon mailed to residents to help residents self-identify the material used in the water service lines. The updated lists are required by the state periodically, and the next update is required in July of this year. And then finally, my last report is from the Strategic Planning Committee. We met on March 22nd, and we reviewed prior efforts by the committee and discussed recent regional efforts in the county that will impact Milltown. The next steps for the committee is to create attainable short and long-term goals that can be acted upon by various subcommittees within the borough. We will be meeting again on Tuesday, April 26th at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers to map out additional goals and objectives. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the Department of Public Works and Recycling, Councilwoman Anna Newbauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the DPW, along with all sanitation collection and curbside bulk collections, the DPW has the following to report. The fence at the firehouse has been repaired. All park bathroom floors have been painted. Mulch has been added to landscape beds at Michelin Field. Infield mix was added to all ball fields as needed. General cleanup and maintenance is taking place at Borough Park, Michelin Field, and Albert Avenue Park for the upcoming soccer, baseball, and softball seasons. The senior center was cleared of all furniture and items to prepare for the installation of new flooring. Concrete collection will take place beginning April 11th. If you have concrete to have picked up, please call extension 187 to get on the list. Additionally, as spring cleanup begins, please remember, no plastic bags for yard waste or grass. Please use cans only. For wood, the chipper is going out on this Thursday. Please call extension 186 for appointment. Branches must be longer than 4 feet and larger than your fist around to be safely chipped. For any updates, please check Channel 15 and milltownnj.org. And additionally, we'll be having a subcommittee meeting with the head of the DPW on Thursday to just cover what projects we want to see done throughout the year.
Great.
And then for the Board of Health, we had a meeting on March 22nd. Our health inspector read her Board of Health reports, and we reviewed them and voted on them. The vital statistics report was read, and the group voted on to approve them. This is just a reminder, there will be a rabies clinic set up for May 24th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is for dogs and cats only. It will be down here at the Borough. And then the next meeting is April 26th at 7:30 p.m. at Borough Hall for the Board of Health. And that's all I have to report for tonight.
Okay, thank you. And next, we have the Department of Recreation, Councilwoman Margaret O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have several reports for you tonight. I will start with the Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. That committee, by the way, meets on the third Wednesdays and has been on Zoom, but will be in person coming up next. And very excited about that. A few of the topics that we discussed at our last meeting, which was very small, which is why I'm encouraging people to join us, was to pursue possible new electronic signage, perhaps replace the sign out in front of Borough Hall with something that was electronic and can be updated with messaging about the many deadlines for registration and start dates for programs that I'm reading to you over and over. Not that I'd stop reading them to you, but another way to learn about them. I'll be reaching out to the organization Keep Middlesex Moving for safety information and wearables for walkers and bikers, and that's in part for a new walking club that Recreation is getting started, and in part for something that the Revitalization Committee is doing on the day after they clean up the park for Earth Day. They're encouraging people to come out and walk and bike and otherwise use the park. So we're trying to get some things that would be helpful for bikers and increase safety. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that Little League starts this Saturday, which is always an exciting day in Milltown. We have one parent of a Little Leaguer on our council, and some of the other council members will be there to support the event as well. From the Recreation Director, I have a few updates from the department. Youth basketball concluded on Saturday, March 19th, and we'd like to give a sincere and warm thank you to all of the volunteer coaches for a great season. Spring soccer clinics began on March 17th. Registration is now open for spring tennis, track and field, and a new multi-sport class. And to register, you can go to our website and go to the Community Pass area to sign up for an account there and register as well. Registration is presently ongoing for several other programs as well, including spring soccer that is set to start on April 16th. And the registration deadline is this coming Monday, April 4th. And they are soliciting volunteers who will receive a warm and sincere thank you at the end of the season to help with spring soccer. If you're interested in doing that, Kim McGrath is the contact, and she can be reached at kmcgrath@milltownborough.com. Fundamental Forest T-ball registration opened Monday, the 21st. Registration for spring yoga, women's volleyball, and men's basketball also opened that day. The yoga start date or location may be impacted by the meeting that was referenced to take place in the senior center, so we'll be keeping in touch with anyone who signs up for yoga about that. New park signage is in the works that will enhance the entry points into our park facilities. Quotes are being solicited for surface repairs for various borough parks, including Michelin Field, Borough Park, and the Pardon tennis courts. And for anyone who's interested in pickleball, we may be lining them for pickleball use as well. The Recreation Department is still accepting employment applications for seasonal summer employment at the Milltown Borough Pool and Albert Avenue Summer Rec Camp. Please note that there will be no applications available in person in the Recreation Department. All applications must be submitted electronically to the Rec Department or the Borough Clerk's office. And all applications, the deadline is looming April 1st. With spring on the way, please remember that if you're interested in renting any Milltown park, please contact the Recreation Department directly to acquire a park facility usage form. And lastly, please note that we're still accepting non-perishable food donations from Milltown Neighbors in Need, as well as the Middlesex County Food Bank, which also supports Milltown residents. You may drop off items at the Borough Hall and place them in the green bins in the hallway of the main entrance during normal business hours. And I think I have the support of the audience here to not leave the food in the police entrance vestibule. And I just want to give a quick update from the Historic Preservation Committee as well. That committee meets on the fourth Thursdays. And they are excited to get space on the Borough webpage, and especially because they'd like to distribute a survey about what the interests might be and how this committee can help Borough residents. The committee has been looking for grants, but finds that the funding is limited to boroughs that have a designated historic district, so we are not currently eligible for many of them. They'd actually like to come and talk to the council about that, so we're putting in a request to do that at the April 24th meeting. They do have a requirement to come and present to council bi-yearly, twice a year, so they'd like it to be them. And they're anxious to partner with other borough committees, and one of the examples of that is working with Recreation for a historical walking tour. And our next meeting is April 28th, and that is one of the committees that prefers to meet via Zoom. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. I heard pickleball and everybody perked up in the room.
I didn't have my glasses on. Were there a lot of nods for that?
Yeah.
All right, noted.
Next, we have the Department of Environmental Health and Social Services, Councilman Rich Revelinsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, let me thank Councilwoman Newbauer for filling in for me for the Environmental Commission meeting this past Wednesday. I was traveling for work and unable to attend, and she took copious amounts of notes, about 5 pages worth. It was a very lengthy meeting, mostly focused around, or I should say a majority of it was focused around some of the lead, water, and sampling discussions. So I encourage all those folks to attend the senior building, or senior citizen center on next Monday at 7. To summarize, though, however, here's the Cliff Notes. During the Wednesday Environmental Commission on March 23rd, members welcomed new member Kate Scotto, started discussions and proposal on a Friends of the Environment group, which are looking to generate a nonprofit and help with some of their endeavors. As I mentioned, they've discussed the lead water and additional sampling locations, if possible. Additionally, there were some questions regarding a stormwater management plan. I believe there were 6 issues, of which they've conceded to 4. So Mike, you and I will have to talk about this after the meeting a little bit. And I think some of it has to pertain to scopes of work provided by the borough and whether or not they fall under stormwater management plan criteria. Another issue that was brought up, and Mimi, perhaps you can look into this, is an ordinance on invasive species. And I remember a few years ago, a very nice woman, I won't say older because she is my mother, came here and asked about bamboo growing, and as a result of that, and I know we've had a couple other residents step forward about some invasive species growing, and just whether or not we have an ordinance in place currently, or can hopefully put one together in short time, identifying some species and always be able to add to it. The group did ask for an update on Ford Avenue, so I'm going to request that if Councilman Zambrana has anything for this meeting in his report, which is coming up next, he mentioned that. And also, they're looking for grant applications for Milltown Park and possibly generating a community garden there. With regard to the Revitalization Committee, I spoke with their president, Katie Velez, today, discussing some of the activities planned for Earth Day. As Margaret mentioned, on Earth Day, and then the second day being a day of enjoyment, reached out to a couple folks with kayaks and water equipment. I know Makor's Barber Shop and the MEF have already started posting some things, and Mimi will have something on the website hopefully shortly with regard to the flyer from the Revitalization Committee outlining the events of the day. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you. So if I could just ask about the invasive species ordinance, that's been something that's been around for a year or two now, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Where do we stand with that? I know the Environmental Commission was weighing in on it, but are they looking to update an existing ordinance? Or, Margaret, do you remember what they talked about last year?
I believe we needed to create a new ordinance, and I was actually going to offer this to Councilman Revelinsky, that our borough attorney kindly had indicated that he would help us.
Happy to do so. That's my job.
He just rolled his eyes at me. He might have changed his mind since he offered that before.
So is it that the Environmental Commission is looking to tweak an existing ordinance?
No.
Or
It's
build
that
an entire
you need a new ordinance that would address invasive species, and someone needs to identify which invasive species you'd like targeted.
So have they identified?
I will get a list from them, and hopefully they'll have some background or criteria indicating as to why they are specifically invasive species that are worthy of an ordinance. Sure. I mean, bamboo is a classic example because the roots grow under the fence, it goes into the neighbor's yard, and it chokes out other plants. You have ailanthus, or the tree of heaven, which actually secretes a residue, killing the trees around it, which I don't think anyone plants those anyway, but it's good to have on there.
Spotted lanternflies, I love that too.
Yep, the spotted lantern, well, they're both from Asia, so that makes sense. I think we are looking for flora, not fauna, or if I've got those reversed, but the plants, not the animals at this time to identify.
So the other thing was that nuisance species came up in discussions with both the committee and with residents who learned that we were composing or beginning to compose that. We have several examples from other boroughs that we can get started with, and Rich, if I hadn't sent them to you already, I certainly can to keep that moving along.
Terrific, thank you.
If you guys want to share those with me, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. And next we have the Department of Finance, Administration, and Planning, Council President Phil Zambrana.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two short reports and just a little summary at the end. Finance, Planning, and Administration, budget meeting dates are going to be set this week, Jeanette, I'm assuming? We'll get started on those budget meetings?
Yes.
The dates?
Yes.
To get together with department heads to finalize that. Ford Avenue Agency met on Tuesday, March 15th. At that time, there were no major updates regarding, with respect to any of the pending decisions to be made by the federal judge. Our code enforcement and zoning officials continue to follow up to get to a resolution with the trucks and cars that are not parked or parked illegally, I should say. But just this past week, Mr. Cahill, Mr. James Cahill, who is the attorney of the Fort Avenue Redevelopment Agency, notified the committee that the judge has changed. So the judge, all this time we've been waiting for a decision to be made on that property, it's now, the case has been reassigned to a new judge. Mr. Cahill did say that usually that's not something that happens, but that his reasoning is that because of the age of this matter, how long this suit has been out and around, is that the administration of the courts is finally making a move to kind of settle this case once and for all, and to try and clear the backlog of cases that are in the courts right now. Mr. Cahill also indicated that because the district courts are not processing as many cases as they usually would be, that the judges in the appellate division that hear and decide the district court appeals are less occupied, and that's probably why this change was made. So this may turn out to be a good thing, but let's see if we're still talking about this 3 years from now. And then I wanted to make the last thing that I wanted to say was I was glad to see that Councilmember Belinsky made, you were dissatisfied with the, how slow the lights were from the last meeting, that you were, I guess, disappointed that they weren't going to be in before the start of the new baseball season. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that you actually were disappointed, because I think I remember 3-4 years ago when this topic first came up, that you voted against those lights.
I did.
Being put in.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you finally come across and part of that decision now, that it's something that you want to happen. And hopefully by the time at the end of the summer comes, they'll be in. There'll be more sports available at night for all residents, regardless of age or affiliation. And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That concludes my report,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Next, Administrator, Jeanette, anything this evening?
No report tonight, Mayor.
Engineer report, Mr. McClellan?
No report tonight, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Vignolo, Attorney report?
I'm going to be working on an invasive species ordinance.
How you certainly will. Good, good. Mayor's comments, I just have a couple. Margaret had mentioned Keep Middlesex Moving in her rec report. I met with the chair of Keep Middlesex Moving, and he is going to come and do a presentation at our April 11th council meeting, which will coincidentally be our youth and government meeting. So it's sort of good because we'll already have kids and their families here. The clerk and I will be going over to Joyce Kilmer School to prep the kids for the afternoon of the 8th to make sure that they learn about Milltown and learn about the process of local government. So the next meeting will be here in Borough Chambers, run by the 8th grade students. So look forward to that. The other update I wanted to tell was I spoke in the beginning of the year about having Milltown join the mayor's wellness campaign that goes on throughout the state. I was going to do a presentation, and look, here it is, the end of March, and have I done one yet? No. But I have been in contact with them. We are going to join, and given that the next meeting is Youth and Government, at the end of April, I will do a presentation, which I think is good timing considering we're getting the new bike paths. It's going to be spring, and we're coming out of the 2 years of COVID, so it's something to look forward to, that we can join with the state and many other municipalities that have joined this campaign to try and come up with ways to come together and keep our town healthy. So with that, I will move on to old business. Does any member of the council have any old business to bring before us this evening? Seeing none, I'll close old business and move on to new business. Does any member of the council have any new business to bring before us this evening? Hearing none, I will move on to audience comment. The public comment portion of our meeting is to allow the public to bring to the council's attention their concerns or comments. The council will respect the public's time by refraining any comment until the speaker has finished. It should further be noted that the public comment portion of our meeting is not structured as a question and answer session. If a member of the public has a specific question they seek answers to, an appointment can be made with the appropriate office. Please state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium. Yes, Mr. Einbein.
Need more hands. big mouth and a bigger hands. Hi, Russ Einbinder, 152A North Main Street. On behalf of the Milltown Lions Club, I saw you approve tonight our request to have the fee waived. I want to remind people, yes, we are definitely having the Easter eggs again. The Easter Bunny will be there. It's a fun thing. A bunch of kids have never even done it because it's been over 2 years since we've been able to do it. And just remind people, it's 12 o'clock on April 9th at Albert Avenue Park. Be there a little before that, definitely, because it gets a little crazy, about 15 to 20 minutes right before that. Madam Mayor, you said you're going to try and be there to help us do the balloons. That'd be awesome. And I also hope to see everybody this weekend, too. I'll be filming for Channel 15 for opening day for the Little League, so hope to see a lot of you there. I know Maria's Pizza and the Bagel Express are going to be giving away stuff again, so you don't have to eat that much, plus there'll be plenty of food there, trust me, and we'll have a great time, and it's some of the things that make me really happy to live in this town. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, Mr. Colligan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for just giving me a few minutes to address the council and Madam Mayor.
Please state your name and address for the
Sure,
record.
it's Patrick Colligan, 158 Main Street in Woodbridge. I am currently the president of New Jersey State PBA. I've been the president since July 2014, represent over 367 locals throughout 21 counties and almost 33,000 members throughout the state. This is a little different for me. I've addressed almost 100 council meetings since 2014. The difference for me is I live a half mile down the road, a little bit outside of Milltown. I come into Milltown to eat. I come into Milltown to shop. I know my backup behind me. I know every one of the Milltown police officers. I know a couple council people here. And to prove that I live close by, I do 24 and a 25 on Washington Avenue. So I just want to prove that to you. I'll save the borough attorney the speech about not discussing your ongoing negotiations with the police department. So I don't expect an answer to anything. I just want to give you some facts about your town's department that I think is very important. First of all, you have an absolute anomaly here in Milltown in that your officers, despite being the second lowest paid in Middlesex County, all stay here. It's truly an anomaly, probably the only town in the state of New Jersey where your dedicated police officers live here. The other anomaly is that more than half of your police officers live in Milltown. Unheard of. I work in Franklin Township. I'm a police officer there. We have over 100 officers. I don't think 10 live in town. So you're blessed to have that. And I don't have to tell you that you have, nobody seems to have an exact count, but between 200 and 300 officers from local, state, and federal agencies probably on every street throughout the town. So it's a great town, certainly a great and safe town to live in. I just want to repeat the most important point I said there is that you're the second lowest paid in Middlesex County. And I certainly know when officers live in or work in certain towns, they're not expecting, the officers in Camden know that they're not going to be the best paid in Camden County. But I think there's some room for improvement here in Milltown. And despite being the second lowest paid, in an inexplicable attempt to make them the very bottom of the barrel, your business administrator chose to take away a 26-year history of a time-off policy. Now, I used to be a PERC commissioner. I was appointed by Governor Corzine, spent several years on PERC, and I will tell you that I have a pretty good track record at these council meetings throughout the state. That's a loser. You're going to lose that. And the real shame of it is that the Milltown PBA spent in the area of $10,000 bringing that to PERC. That's $10,000 that's not going to the fireworks committee, it's not going to the Little League, which is opening next week. That's $10,000 that doesn't go back into the community. I don't get that. I spoke to several people about that when she first took that away. Again, 26-year history. I don't get it. It's likely a loser, and it's just truly affected morale here in Milltown. I also was a little disturbed that, some of the council people and some other people prominent in town, we're letting her do her job. And I said, well, she still works for you, and if the job isn't being done correctly in portions, you should be correcting that. But I guess we'll wait for that decision to come out of PERC. That's coming out soon. But my other prediction is you have up to 6 officers leaving in the next few years. And I will tell you, my 100% guarantee is that those 5 or 6 officers that you're going to be replacing with some of these who are leaving are not going to stay, are not going to have the dedication to the town of Milltown that these officers do today. So bring that to the bank. You have to make a decision when you go into your next executive session to determine how you're going to treat this agency in the next couple of years. Just some quick data, because I think it's important for your residents to know, and many of you to know, from January 1st, 2019 to the other day, 46,126 calls for service, 10,463 car stops, 2 of which were my children over the past couple of years, 4,051 radar runs, 1,543 EMS calls, 351 fire calls, 699 motor vehicle crashes, 284 theft calls, 1,011 suspicious person calls, 911 calls, you had 1,566, domestic violence calls, 200, certainly an uptick as we saw through COVID throughout the state, and assisting other police departments, 830. Multiple commendations from your officers for a myriad of reasons. And what's really important, you know, the ongoing drug problem isn't immune here in Milltown. You had multiple Narcan saves, overdoses. People would not exist here today if it wasn't for those Narcan saves. And some quick facts about Milltown. It's an accredited police department, as Councilman Potter talked about before, professional, dependable, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 0 complaints of excessive force, unheard of in policing in New Jersey. 0 complaints about racially biased policing. You took words out of my mouth earlier, Councilman Potter. And tens of thousands of police interactions. Again, I see them virtually every day when I'm coming through Milltown. So when those residents say nothing happens in Milltown, you're welcome. You can thank the Milltown Police Department. Cops don't go anywhere without backup. I'd like to thank my backup today, the Milltown Police Department that showed up. You have an extraordinarily dedicated group of men, and I just want them treated a little better than they have been, and I'm sure that the next executive session, you'll discuss that a little further. So thank you for your few minutes of time, and everybody knows how to get in touch with me, so I'm happy to take any questions after the meeting, and don't discuss ongoing negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colligan. We'll look forward to have you back when the PERC situation comes in and once the negotiations are finished. Because we certainly all want a fair and equitable conclusion to the negotiation. Anyone else from the audience have any comments? Seeing none, I will close audience comments and move on to council comments. Does any member of the council have any final comments?
Just one, Madam Mayor. It'd be remiss after the last 2 weeks of watching St. Peter's University on their Cinderella season, not to say, you know, again, they're not in our county, but they're in our state. Congratulations to those young men. It would have been nice for them to go all the way, but well done.
Yes. Local boys make good.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just to remind everybody, Milltown 4th of July is having a Dine to Donate at Bagel Express today and tomorrow. So please support Milltown 4th of July and get your bagel, get your lunch, enjoy. Be there tomorrow morning.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Colligan for coming in tonight. Those are some pretty amazing facts. I think we all know it. We all live it day to day. We're happy to see our officers around town, and we do feel safe here. And getting some of those numbers put in front of us is a bit of an eye-opener, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Second.
Third.
Fourth.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close council comments and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Potter, second by Councilman Revelinski. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. Have a good evening.
Put some pepper on that one.